Hello, everyone. This is part 2 for week number 6. And in this particular lecture here, we are continuing with our discussion of scientific writing. And these additional tips or guidelines, they were prepared by Frederick Bushman. And so I think these are some excellent suggestions. And again, as you've heard lectures both this week and the prior week, there is definitely a strategy related to scientific writing. When you read a paper, you can definitely appreciate that it has been written in a scientific manner. Doing that on your own is challenging at first, and I recognize that. And even somebody like myself who's experienced, I continue to make mistakes. And so it's kind of a continual process of just trying to improve, realizing that you're not always going to get it right. Again, that's where your committee comes in to help out. And that's where I come in if I'm not part of your committee directly. Now, the link here, if you want to review anything that I discuss, that can take you to the document presented by Bushman. So first here, write in short sentences. Keeping sentences short. Sometimes you might read something and it goes on and on and on. Sometimes there's too many thoughts in the sentence. Short sentences are easier to read than long sentences and help keep thoughts in order. If it just kind of wanders, it makes it very difficult to follow along with what the author is expressing. So, here's an example. This came from Crick and Watson's paper on the double helical structure of DNA. They wrote, quote, "We wish to suggest a structure for the salt of deoxyribose nucleic acid." That's pretty simple. Doesn't get much simpler than that. If you write a sentence and it feels like it's too long, try to revise it. What I'll probably say to you is try to revise this sentence into 2 sentences or 3 sentences. Because sometimes, again, we write conversationally, which is not the best way to go, should not be done for scientific writing. And when we write conversationally, it becomes easier to have 2 or 3 thoughts within a sentence. Next, weak intensifiers always hurt you. So you want to avoid using words like very, interestingly, strikingly, new, novel, excitingly. So that is kind of an editorializing, proclaiming your opinion, right? What is interesting? It's interesting to you. Is it interesting to the reader? Now, novel is one of those words that sometimes people get away with. Or if you are doing a brand new surgical approach, maybe you can get away with new, but avoid things like interestingly, excitingly. Again, that's too flowery of language. Next, some words are always dispensable. One of those is fundamentally. For example, these results suggest that it would be fundamentally difficult to achieve a fast growth with a long lifetime. So what if we get rid of the word fundamentally? Now it would be, these results suggest that it would be difficult to achieve a fast growth with a long lifetime. So getting rid of that extra word is important. Other examples of words that are always dispensable include certainly and basically. So if you can eliminate a word or two here and there, that is ideal. Because sometimes a manuscript may only allow, a journal may only allow a 3,000 word manuscript. Or your abstract may only be allowed 250 words. So how do you make those edits to get your point across? Looking at verb tense. Be careful to keep verb tense consistent with sections of a paper or written piece. For example, the results section of a paper is usually in the past tense. Why? Well, the research has been done, the experiments have been completed. General principles disclosed by experimentation can be described in the present tense since the conclusion is ongoing, but it's important to be consistent. Don't start sentences with long modifying clauses. Here's an example. Using photofluorescence imaging as a form of biological oximetry, we confirm the oxygen poor environment of the gut lumen and demonstrate the existence of a dynamic equilibrium with an established gradient whereby the mammalian gut releases oxygen into the gut lumen. Okay, here is a shorter version of that. We used photofluorescence imaging to characterize oxygen gradients in the gut lumen and found higher levels near the gut wall. So again, if it sounds like you are trying to sound too smart, is there a way that you can edit? Next, get to the subject and verb early. So, first sentence. Here, a study of microbial communities inhabiting mangrove sediments across southeastern China, spanning mangroves in 6 nature reserves, was conducted. Instead, we conducted a study of microbial communities inhabiting mangrove sediments in 6 nature reserves in southeastern China. Now, in several of these previous examples, the author was giving examples using we. Well, let's quickly discuss first-person language. Should we use it? No. Avoid I, we, our. So for that example where it says we conducted a study of, instead, the study was conducted, right? So whenever you see that first person, avoid that. Very important. Next, rephrase for brevity. Here's a long one. You can see that there. If you'd like to read through it, go ahead and do so. Here is the shorter version. So again, editing is hard work. You'll write and write and write, and you'll feel like every word is important. But if I come back to you, or if your committee comes back to you with some edits, just realize that that is all part of the process. Next up, minimize novel abbreviations. Now, of course, the picture here shows some common texting abbreviations, or maybe ways that you communicate versus email. But not everything needs to be abbreviated in a research paper. So choose abbreviations that are common. Try not to create your own abbreviations. So if something is abbreviated like body mass index, and you're going to be using that frequently throughout your paper, spell it out the first time it appears and use the parentheses BMI, and then you can use BMI from there on out. When to spell out numbers. Now, this one is always a a challenging one, and some journals allow you to do certain things. Write out all numbers less than 10. So if the number is 8, spell out 8. And I know sometimes people will want to have that 8 there, such as there were 8 subjects in the group, should be spelled E-I-G-H-T. Also, when starting a sentence, the number needs to be spelled out. So don't put 461 in number format. Put 461 subjects. Blah, blah, blah. Now, looking at writing and editing paragraphs. Start paragraphs with topic sentences. That topic sentence should introduce and summarize what follows in the paragraph. You can't compress the whole paragraph into the first sentence, but you can indicate what is to follow to create interest. Think of it as being the hook. Next, end paragraphs with sentences that collect what was important and set up what follows. One idea per paragraph. It can be tempting to have additional ideas in there. If I'm writing an introduction section and I'm curious about what is the best approach for training for a marathon, I might have my initial paragraph that's discussing what a marathon is, how many people participate in marathons each year, and what are the potential health benefits of running. Maybe not in that particular order, but basically setting up the stage that marathon training, people need to train for marathons, etc., etc. And then I might have in my second paragraph maybe the most common marathon training program. Then my third paragraph would be related to the other marathon training program that we're going to be comparing. But I'm only focused on that marathon program, what is known about it, how effective it may be. And then finally, in my fourth paragraph, that's the purpose of my study, where I'm highlighting that it is unknown, or maybe it's not clear which is the best marathon training program approach, and that's what the purpose of this scoping review. Avoid starting with lengthy generalizations. And then finally, cutting deadwood makes possible more cutting. When you're editing, and as you reread, you might appreciate that more editing needs to be done. As you start to edit something, it may become clearer that you need to edit more, or that in that process, you need to maybe add some more in because something's missing. All right. I think that's some valuable information there. And again, we're going to be just working hard to try to make these papers be the best representations possible, because some of you may want to go on to try to submit them to journals.